when did you learn about anabolic steroids? Because that is a part of bodybuilding. And so with you seeing these bodybuilders and like even Sylvester Stallone, was there a point where you kind of learned about it and you were like, wait, what? Or did you kind of know about it progressively as you were diving into it more?
I knew about it, you know, and it was more apparent when I showed up at the teen nationals. I could see guys in better condition and like, you know, guys that have more mature muscle at 17, 18, 19. And that's when I realized, wow, this is, you know, this is something that if I'm going to continue to do, I'm going to have to dabble in something like that. And I didn't know much about like the deep ins and outs of training for a contest and what you needed to do, but I knew about testosterone. I mean, of course, I watched the Rocky movies at 12 and saw
Yeah.
Ivan Drago taking his testosterone shots.
What a cheater. Stallone would never do that.
Yeah,
The United
yeah,
States
right.
would never act that way.
So I thought, shit, you know, that's the way, you know. But of course, at 12, you think you're influenced. The movie means, okay, he lost, and steroids aren't the answer, right?
Right.
So,
Son of a bitch.
yeah.
As you got into it further, or just even like seeing more modern day bodybuilding and seeing the size that people have grown to, it seems like there's people are confused. A lot of people think it's just drugs, and a lot of people think the guy that gets the first place trophy just took a lot more shit than everybody else. What are some of your thoughts on that?
I think it's bullshit because when I started training, you know, I mentioned, you know, when I started about 6 months in, I met Chris Aceto, who trained me for almost my whole career, who was a great nutritionist. He actually graduated first in his class, exercise and nutrition, at Springfield College, which a lot of people don't know. And he taught me a lot about the nutrition aspect. And the funny thing is we rarely talked about drugs, and because that really wasn't one of those things. I mean, as a teenager, you really, you know, I had the physique and I was progressing super fast, and everything was very, very basic. And that's the way I kind of believed. And I saw success right away from that. So I wasn't eyeing, okay, well, to move forward, I need to do a ton of drugs or anything like that. Shit. I mean, it was kind of like voodoo, right? No one talked about it. And we didn't have the internet, so you couldn't read about like cycles and that kind of stuff. The magazines definitely didn't talk about it. Every guy was natural in the magazines. And, you know, every guy was just like, you know, took the supplements, the Weeder, you know, the chewable branch chain aminos or whatever they were selling at the time. So for me, you know, to see what's happened now and see what people's perception is of what everyone takes, including myself when I was winning Mr. Olympia titles, it's just, I mentioned you guys earlier, you know, when you're a Mr. Olympia contender, like there's been 13, right? I was number 11. Listen, we're destined for greatness, you know. Take the drugs in or out. Drugs aren't going to make that person because you have to have the structure, you have to have the mindset, you have to have the muscle capability to manage that much size and that much condition on stage, balance, all that symmetry, those things you talk about. And I just think that society is becoming so jaded with how they perceive like what it takes to be at the top, and they want shortcuts. And we talk about that, you know, you touched on an important thing was a work ethic. And a lot of today's society lacks that because it's the upbringing that brings that, you know, that blue collar shit that you don't hear about anymore. Like, you know, me sitting there telling you I prayed every day to get through my work days.
Yeah.
Like that shit's like, that's what makes a person. And I never was the most genetically gifted guy on that Olympia stage, but I trained my ass off, and I knew how to diet, and I was always on track with everything. I mean, everything was structured. I lived in a fucking box in order to be the best, meaning I had no outside. People would call me with their problems, I'd hang up on them. Like the phones were off. Don't bother me with negative shit. And I just went at it. And I think now the bodies, yes, there's some drug-induced bodies. I think it's got out of control. I mean, you talk about all these peptides and all the bullshit now that goes into it. These people come up and ask me questions. I mean, I was in Houston this past weekend, and they're like, hey, what do you think about this? I don't even know these fucking terms anymore, these people use. I mean, I have no idea. I know about testosterone. I know about a few cutting agents and whatever, but it's not something I'm even educated on, so I can't even speak on it. And people look at me like, oh, he's full of shit. But it's a different era now.
Right.
And I think that the internet's fucked everything up. And I think that the magazines, you know, they gave a certain amount of information the right way. And once it became live on the net and you got these kamikaze type people, I think it kind of threw a wrench in a lot of things and influenced a lot of these young kids. Right.